On August 25, 1973, two little girls vanished from the middle of a crowd of 12,000 people, asked permission to use the bathroom during a football match and never returned. 52 years later, a bone fragment embedded with glass, found buried in a remote farm well 3 hours north of Adelaide, may finally answer the question that has haunted South Australia for half a century. What happened to the children who disappeared in plain sight? 4:10 in the afternoon, August 25, 1973. Les Ratcliffe walks the corridors beneath the Sir Edwin Smith stand at Adelaide Oval, his voice bouncing off concrete walls. "Joanne? Joanne!" The sound echoes through the dim passageways, mixing with the muffled roar of 12,000 people watching football above his head. 20 minutes have passed since his daughter left for the bathroom, with the little girl from the family sitting next to them. His watch tells him what his gut already knows. 20 minutes is too long. He stops at the entrance to the ladies' room, hesitating at the threshold he cannot cross. A woman emerges, and he catches the door before it swings shut. "Excuse me, have you seen two girls in there? One about 11, one very young?" The woman shakes her head, barely slowing her stride back toward the game. Les pulls his hand back from the door and continues down the corridor, checking his watch again as if the numbers might have changed in the last 30 seconds. But to understand why Les Ratcliffe's concern hasn't yet crystallized into panic, you need to know the world his daughter lives in, a world where 11-year-old girls navigate public spaces with a confidence their grandchildren will never know. Joanne Lee Ratcliffe sits in classrooms at her Adelaide school with her back straight and her attention focused, the kind of student teachers call responsible. At home, she helps with dinner without being asked, sets the table while her mother cooks, dries dishes while her father washes. She's 11, which in 1973 Adelaide means old enough to walk to the corner shop alone, old enough to look after younger children for short periods, old enough to be trusted with small freedoms that come naturally in a city that still calls itself the city of churches. Today she sits in the Sir Edwin Smith stand at Adelaide Oval with her parents, watching North Adelaide play Norwood in a match that means everything to the 12,000 people packed into the stadium and nothing to her. The game is background noise to the more interesting work of people watching, of studying the crowd, of absorbing the adult world she's on the edge of joining. When the family sitting next to them arrives, a grandmother with a tiny girl who looks barely old enough for school, Joanne naturally extends her hand when the child stumbles on the stadium steps. That's just who she is, the helper, the responsible one, the girl you can trust. Kirste Jane Gordon is 4 years old, which means she's small enough that the stadium seats feel enormous, small enough that her feet swing above the concrete floor, small enough that she needs help with bathroom doors and high sinks, and all the infrastructure built for people 3 times her size. She's here with her grandmother today, her parents somewhere else, doing whatever adults do on Saturday afternoons. The football match is color and noise and confusion, a swirl of movement she can't quite follow. But the older girl sitting next to her, Joanne, with the kind voice, makes everything feel manageable. When Joanne takes her hand to help her navigate the steep stadium stairs, Kirste doesn't question it. This is how the world works when you're 4. Older children know things, adults know more things, and you follow where they lead because that's what keeps you safe. She chatters to Joanne about nothing in particular, the way 4-year-olds do, and Joanne listens with the patience of someone who remembers being small, who understands that talking is how little kids process the overwhelming bigness of the world. Adelaide Oval sits in the heart of Adelaide, surrounded by parklands that separate the city centre from the suburbs that sprawl beyond. The stadium itself is a cathedral of sport, its grounds meticulously maintained, its stands filled with families who consider attendance at South Australian National Football League matches a civic duty as much as entertainment. The Sir Edwin Smith stand rises on the western side of the oval, concrete and steel supporting rows of bench seating where families squeeze together, strangers' shoulders touching, the boundaries between groups blurring in the communal experience of watching young men chase a leather ball across manicured grass. The bathrooms sit beneath the stands, accessible through corridors that run the perimeter of the stadium. Fluorescent lights buzz overhead, their glow harsh after the natural light filtering through the stadium's open top. Earlier in the afternoon, around 2:30 or 3 o'clock, Joanne and Kirste made their first trip to the bathroom together. Joanne asked permission from her parents, received it with barely a glance from adults absorbed in the game, and led Kirste down the stairs, through the corridors, to the ladies' room and back. The whole journey took perhaps 10 minutes, and they returned to their seats without incident, without drama, without anything to suggest that the world was anything other than exactly what it appeared to be. Safe, predictable, manageable. That successful first trip created a template, a proof of concept that would inform the decision when Kirste needed to go again an hour later. 3:45 in the afternoon. The match enters its third quarter, and the crowd's energy shifts with the momentum on the field. North Adelaide has pulled ahead by 2 goals, and the Norwood supporters around the Ratcliffe and Gordon families groan with each missed opportunity. Kirste tugs on her grandmother's sleeve, whispering something that gets lost in the crowd noise. The grandmother leans down, and Kirste repeats herself, louder this time. "I need the toilet." Joanne overhears and turns to her own parents. "Can we go to the bathroom again?" Les Ratcliffe glances at his daughter, then back at the field where play is resuming. "You went before." "I know, but Kirste needs to go." Kathleen Ratcliffe looks at the small girl fidgeting next to her grandmother, then at Joanne with the expression of a mother performing rapid calculation. "The bathroom is close. They managed fine earlier. Joanne is responsible. The game is more interesting than chaperoning bathroom trips." "All right, straight there and back." "We will." Joanne stands, takes Kirste's hand, and begins navigating past the knees and feet of spectators between them and the aisle. Behind them, their family's attention has already returned to the field. The roar builds, then crashes into disappointment as the kick goes wide. In the noise and movement, 2 girls descending stadium stairs register as nothing remarkable. The corridors beneath the stands feel darker after the winter sunshine above. Joanne blinks as her eyes adjust, Kirste's small hand warm in hers. The concrete floor is scuffed from decades of foot traffic, the walls institutional beige, the lighting industrial and indifferent. They pass a vendor selling hot chips, the smell of salt and grease mixing with disinfectant. Other people move through the corridor, men heading to bathrooms, women returning, children darting ahead of slower adults. Joanne pushes open the heavy door to the ladies' room, holds it for Kirste, follows her inside. The space is crowded with women and girls, a queue forming near the stalls. Kirste waits her turn, bouncing with 4-year-old impatience. When a stall opens, Joanne helps her with the door latch, waits outside while Kirste manages what she can, helps again when the toilet paper dispenser proves too high. They wash hands at sinks designed for adults, Kirste standing on tiptoes. Joanne lifts her slightly so she can reach the water stream. They dry hands on the damp roller towel and Joanne pushes back through the heavy door into the corridor. The corridor seems more crowded now. Men in hats and dark jackets move past, their faces unremarkable. The roar from above indicates something exciting on the field, a goal perhaps, and the sound pulls attention upward, away from the corridor traffic. A man appears in their path, not blocking exactly, but occupying the space they need to move through. He wears a soft-brimmed hat, neutral-colored, the kind thousands of men at Adelaide Oval wear. His face is thin, cheekbones prominent, age around 40. He looks at Joanne, then at Kirste. "Your parents are looking for you," he says. His voice carries adult certainty, the tone that expects obedience. "They're waiting at the south gate. I'll take you to them." Joanne hesitates. She's 11, old enough to question. But she's also been taught to respect adults, to believe adults, to follow their instructions. And she has Kirste to think about. Kirste, who's 4, who's looking up at her with trust. "They're at our seats," Joanne says. They moved. There was a problem. They're waiting at the gate. The man's hand moves toward Kirste, not grabbing but guiding. "Come on." They're worried. The lie works because it contains plausibility. Parents do sometimes move seats. Problems do arise. Joanne doesn't want to be rude. She doesn't want to cause a scene. And some part of her wants to believe that adults know what they're doing, that following instructions is the path to safety. The man begins walking toward the south gate, and Joanne follows because Kirste is following, and Kirste is following because an adult told her to. Joanne's hand tightens on Kirste's fingers. She looks back toward the direction of their seats, but the corridor bends, and she can't see anything except more concrete, more fluorescent lights, More anonymous people. They emerge into daylight near the south gate. The man's hand is on Kirste's shoulder now, firm, guiding. To anyone watching, it looks like a father managing an unruly daughter. His body language broadcasts authority and mild frustration, the universal signal of adults dealing with misbehaving children. Joanne walks beside them, her confusion visible but easily misread as guilt. A food vendor near the gate notices them. He's selling pies from a cart, watching the crowd with the attention of someone whose livelihood depends on reading people. He sees the man with the two girls, sees the older one looking uncertain, sees the little one pulling back slightly, but he sees what he expects to see. A father who's had enough, taking misbehaving children home early. The vendor has seen this scene 100 times, children acting up, parents reaching their limit, early departures accompanied by lectures. He watches them pass through the south gate, watches them move toward the parking area beyond. Just another family group, unremarkable except for one detail he'll remember 52 years later. The man wore a hat, and something about the older girl's face suggested fear rather than shame. Other witnesses see similar scenes. A woman returning from her car notices the man with two children, observes the same body language of adult frustration and child reluctance. She makes the same assumption. Domestic discipline, none of her business. A couple walking toward the stadium passes them heading the opposite direction, notes the scene with the same interpretation that allows them to continue without stopping. The man, the 11-year-old, and the 4-year-old reach the edge of Adelaide Oval's grounds and continue into the streets beyond. The last witness loses sight of them. The thread connecting Joanne and Kirste to their families stretches and snaps. And in the stadium behind them, 12,000 people continue watching football, still unaware that anything has changed. 4 o'clock passes. 4:10. Les Ratcliffe checks his watch, feels the first flutter of real concern replacing mild annoyance. Beside him, Kathleen divides her attention between the field and the aisle, watching for two familiar figures. In the adjacent section, Kirste's grandmother shifts uncomfortably, craning her neck to scan the crowd. The game continues, the score tightens, but in two families, attention is fragmenting, worry seeping in. By 4:15, Les is on his feet, moving down the aisle toward the corridors. By 4:20, Kirste's grandmother has joined the search, taking a different direction, both of them navigating passages beneath the stands, calling names that get swallowed by concrete and crowd noise. By 4:30, Kathleen Ratcliffe is asking stadium staff for help, requesting a PA announcement. The request gets denied. The game is too loud, too close to its climax, too important to interrupt for what's probably just children who wandered off. But they won't turn up. Not in a second, not in an hour, not in 52 years. Because somewhere beyond the south gate, beyond the reach of 12,000 witnesses and stadium announcements and frantic parents searching corridors, Joanne Ratcliffe and Kirste Gordon have crossed from the world of the found into the world of the missing. 5:15 in the afternoon. The PA system crackles to life, the announcement finally breaking through bureaucratic resistance 90 minutes too late. Would Joanne Ratcliffe and Kirste Gordon please return to the Sir Edwin Smith stand? Your families are waiting for you. The words echo across a stadium that's already emptying, the match over. 12,000 people flowing toward exits in the chaos of post-game dispersal. If the girls are still somewhere in the building, they're being swept away in the tide of departing spectators. If they're not in the building, the announcement is meaningless, noise disappearing into winter air. Les Ratcliffe stands near the south gate, scanning faces in the crowd, looking for his daughter's dark hair, for Kirste's small frame. Every girl who passes triggers a moment of hope that dies when the face proves wrong. Beside him, Kathleen clutches a stadium staff member's arm. You have to do something. They've been gone for an hour and a half. This isn't normal. The staff member, young and clearly out of his depth, nods with the vigorous uncertainty of someone who doesn't know what to do. The announcement's been made. They'll hear it. They'll come back. What if they can't hear it? Kathleen's voice rises. What if they're not here anymore? By 5:30, South Australia Police receive the official report. 2 children missing from Adelaide Oval. Joanne Ratcliffe, 11 years old, dark hair, wearing jeans and a blue shirt. Kirste Gordon, 4 years old, blonde, wearing a pink dress. Last seen at approximately 3:45. Now over 90 minutes gone. The responding officers arrive at 5:50. The stadium nearly empty now. The crowd dispersed across Adelaide. No perimeter was established in time. No exits were monitored. The golden hour, the critical window when most abducted children are recovered alive, has already passed, while stadium staff debated whether an announcement would be too disruptive. Senior Constable Derek Morrison takes statements from both families in a quiet room beneath the stands. His notebook fills with details that feel simultaneously crucial and useless. What were they wearing? What bathroom did they use? Did they seem upset? Did anyone follow them? The families answer as best they can, but the truth is they weren't watching. They were watching football. That was the whole point of being here. Did anyone see them after they left? Morrison asks. Les shakes his head. We thought they'd be right back, like before. Before? They went earlier, around 2:30, maybe 3. They were gone 10 minutes and came back fine. Morrison writes this down, underlining it. The first trip established a pattern, created confidence, made the second trip feel safe. This is how predators work. They understand routine. They wait for the moment when vigilance relaxes. By nightfall, police have swept every inch of Adelaide Oval. Every bathroom, every storage room, every corridor and concourse. The concern is that the girls might be trapped somewhere, locked in a maintenance closet, hurt and unable to call for help. But the search reveals nothing except the emptiness of a stadium after the crowd has gone. The building holds no secrets tonight. Whatever happened to Joanne and Kirste happened outside these walls. Sunday morning breaks with news crews descending on Adelaide Oval. Radio stations interrupt regular programming with bulletins. Television news leads with photographs of 2 smiling girls who should be eating breakfast at home but instead are somewhere unknown, in circumstances no one wants to imagine. The public appeal goes out. Have you seen these children? Were you at Adelaide Oval yesterday? Did you see anything unusual? The phone lines at police headquarters light up. Tips flood in, dozens by noon, hundreds by evening. Each one gets logged, assigned, investigated. A woman in Glenelg thought she saw 2 girls matching the description near the beach. A man in the Adelaide Hills swears he passed a car with children in the back who looked distressed. A shopkeeper in the city center remembers 2 girls coming into his store alone around 5 o'clock. Every lead gets followed. Every witness gets interviewed. Every possibility gets chased down corridors that end in nothing. Detective Sergeant Colin Grant takes command of the investigation Monday morning. He's worked missing children cases before, runaways mostly, kids who turn up within 48 hours embarrassed and apologetic. But this case has a different feeling. The ages are wrong for runaways. 4-year-olds don't run away, and 11-year-olds taking 4-year-olds with them makes no sense. The circumstances are wrong too. Taken from a public place in broad daylight suggests planning, boldness, someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Grant pulls the file on the Beaumont children, Jane, Arna, and Grant Beaumont, ages 9, 7, and 4, vanished from Glenelg Beach 7 years ago. Also Adelaide, also a public place. Also broad daylight, also never found. The similarities crawl up his spine like ice water. Same city, similar ages, same impossible boldness. Could it be the same person? He assembles a team to review both cases side by side, looking for connections, but the differences outnumber the similarities. Beaumont was a beach, this is a stadium. Beaumont was 3 children, this is 2. 7 years is a long gap for a predator who targets children. Most can't control their urges that long. And the Beaumont investigation generated thousands of leads that went nowhere. If it's the same person, they're facing a ghost who's proven uncatchable. The composite sketch artist arrives Tuesday morning. Grant has assembled the witnesses who saw a man with 2 girls near the south gate, the food vendor, a woman returning to her car, a couple who passed them heading opposite directions. The artist works with each witness separately, building a picture from overlapping descriptions. The face that emerges becomes iconic. Male, Caucasian, approximately 40 years old, thin face, high cheekbones, somewhat gaunt. And the detail every witness agrees on, a hat, soft-brimmed, neutral color, pulled low enough to shadow his eyes but not so low as to seem suspicious. The kind of hat 1,000 men wore at Adelaide Oval that day. Unremarkable until it became the signature of a man who stole children in plain sight. Grant stares at the sketch and feels the weight of its anonymity. This could be anyone. This could be the man standing next to you on a bus, sitting behind you at church, serving you at a shop. The ordinariness is what makes it chilling. Evil doesn't announce itself with horns and a tail. It wears a hat and speaks in calm tones about parents waiting at gates. The sketch gets distributed to every news outlet in South Australia. Within days, it appears on every television screen, every newspaper front page, every community bulletin board. Have you seen this man? The public response is immediate but scattered. People call in identifying neighbors, ex-husbands, strangers who made them uncomfortable. Each identification gets checked, each suspect gets interviewed, each alibi gets verified. None of them are the man in the hat. By the end of the first week, ground searches have covered parklands around Adelaide, vacant lots, waterways. The River Torrens gets dragged. Abandoned buildings get searched. Volunteer teams comb through areas where bodies might be concealed. They find nothing, no clothing, no belongings, no sign that Joanne and Kirste were ever there. The investigation expands beyond Adelaide's borders. Could the man have taken them interstate? Queensland police get alerts. Victoria police get alerts. New South Wales police get alerts. The net spreads wider. The possibilities multiply. And the likelihood of finding the girls alive diminishes with each passing day. In the Ratcliffe home, Joanne's bedroom remains exactly as she left it Saturday morning. Her bed is made with the precision of a responsible 11-year-old. Her school books sit stacked on her desk, homework completed, and waiting for Monday that never came. Her parents can't bring themselves to touch anything, as if preserving the room might preserve the possibility that she'll walk through the front door and need these things again. The Gordon family faces similar paralysis. Kirste's toys wait in her room. A half-finished puzzle sits on the kitchen table. Her grandmother wakes each morning and forgets for just a moment before remembering crashes back and the grief begins again. The media coverage shifts from immediate crisis to ongoing tragedy. Joanne and Kirste's faces become familiar to every Australian. The composite sketch of the man in the hat becomes a symbol of parental nightmares, of dangers lurking in public spaces, of the moment when trusting an adult becomes a child's fatal mistake. 3 weeks after the disappearance, Detective Grant reviews what they know with certainty. 2 girls entered Adelaide Oval with their families. 2 girls asked permission for a bathroom trip. Multiple witnesses saw a man with 2 girls leaving through the south gate. Then nothing. No confirmed sightings beyond the stadium perimeter. No ransom demands. No bodies. No leads that survive scrutiny. What they suspect but can't prove. The man approached the girls in the corridor, used psychological manipulation to gain control, walked them out in full view of hundreds of people who saw exactly what he wanted them to see, a father dealing with misbehaving children. Where he took them, what he did to them, what happened in the hours and days after they left Adelaide Oval remains hidden behind a wall of silence that 24-hour police work can't penetrate. The case begins its slow descent from active investigation to cold case status. Not officially, not yet, but the momentum shifts. The daily briefings become weekly. The task force shrinks, the media moves on to newer tragedies, and 2 families settle into a nightmare that has no end because it has no answers, just an eternal question mark where their children used to be. 1979. 6 years have passed since Adelaide Oval, and the investigation has produced nothing resembling resolution. The case file has grown to thousands of pages, witness statements, tip reports, dead ends documented in bureaucratic detail. The original task force has disbanded. The composite sketch still hangs in police stations, but the leads have stopped coming. In a wood-paneled courtroom in Adelaide, a coroner delivers the verdict that transforms hope into legal fact. Joanne Ratcliffe and Kirste Gordon are declared deceased. Cause of death listed as murder by person or persons unknown. Administrative necessity. Families need death certificates to settle estates, to move forward in the only ways the law recognizes. But it's also official acknowledgement that the girls aren't coming home, that 6 years of waiting was waiting for nothing. Les and Kathleen Ratcliffe sit in the courtroom and hear their daughter declared dead by a judge who never knew her, based on evidence that consists entirely of absence. No body, no confession, no concrete proof. Just the statistical reality that children taken by strangers don't survive. The families age in ways that have nothing to do with calendars. Les Ratcliffe's hair goes gray, deep lines settling into his face. He drives past Adelaide Oval sometimes, unable to help himself, staring at the building that swallowed his daughter. Kirste's grandmother dies in 1984, taking with her the guilt of being the last to grant permission for a bathroom trip. Adelaide moves forward but never forgets. The case becomes part of the city's identity, paired with the Beaumont children as twin traumas. Parents who let children play unsupervised in 1966 would never dream of it by 1980. The Stranger Danger campaigns sweeping Australian schools trace their origin to cases like this. Then, in 1998, a name emerges. Arthur Stanley Brown, age 86, arrested in Queensland for the murders of Judith and Susan Mackay, two sisters ages 7 and 5, who disappeared from Townsville in August 1970. Their bodies were found in a remote location, evidence of sexual assault. The case went cold for 28 years until DNA technology connected Brown to preserved evidence. Detective Sarah Chen, now handling the Ratcliffe Gordon case, reads the Mackay file and feels electricity run through her. Two girls, similar ages, August, public abduction, and the date, August 26, 1970, exactly 3 years and 1 day before Adelaide Oval. Chen pulls Brown's photograph and places it next to the composite sketch from 1973. The bone structure aligns. Gaunt face, high cheekbones, age range matching, close enough to warrant investigation. She interviews Brown in Queensland custody, his dementia already manifesting, lucidity coming and going. She shows photographs of Joanne and Kirste. Do you recognize these girls? Should I? They disappeared from Adelaide in '73. August 25th. I've never been to Adelaide. A witness recognized you from Adelaide Oval. Said you were the man who took those girls. Brown's lawyer intervenes. Ends the interview. Chen leaves with nothing concrete but certainty in her gut. The breakthrough comes unexpectedly. Brown mentions to a fellow inmate that he remembers Adelaide Festival Center being built. Watched them working on it. The inmate reports this to authorities. Chen checks construction records. Adelaide Festival Center was under construction in 1973, specifically around August. Circumstantial evidence, but it places Brown and Adelaide at the exact time, contradicting his claim. Chen builds a case file. Witness identifications. The construction comment. Pattern match with Mackay murders. Prosecutors shake their heads. Compelling. Not enough. Not without bodies. Not without physical evidence. Take him to trial for Mackay first. The Mackay trial begins in 2000. DNA evidence, witnesses, forensic pathology. The jury deadlocks. Hung jury. While prosecutors prepare retrial, Brown's dementia accelerates. Medical experts declare him unfit to stand trial. 2002. Arthur Stanley Brown dies in custody, brain destroyed by disease, taking whatever secrets he possessed into silence. If he killed Joanne and Kirste, no confession will ever come. The families are left with strong suspicions but zero proof. The case returns to its filing cabinet. Chen retires in 2008, the Ratcliffe Gordon case, haunting her. New detectives inherit the file, find nothing new. The reward grows to $1 million Australian dollars. Public appeals continue on anniversaries, but credible tips stop coming. Until 2024, Mark Trevor Marshall walks into a police station with a handwritten statement that reads like confession by proxy. His father, Stanley Arthur Hart, died in 1999. Marshall himself is a convicted pedophile serving time. His statement alleges that Hart abducted Joanne Ratcliffe and Kirste Gordon from Adelaide Oval, drove them to a farm in Yatina in South Australia's mid-north, and buried their bodies in a well on the property. The statement includes details never made public: specific well location, method of disposal, time frame. Either Marshall is telling truth about his father's crime, or he's exceptionally skilled liar with inside information. Detective Liam Foster, current case officer, reads the statement and immediately thinks, why now? Hart's been dead 25 years. Marshall's been in prison a decade. The answer is simple. Marshall has nothing left to lose. His father's dead and beyond prosecution. his own reputation already destroyed, and perhaps some small part of his conscience finally cracked. Foster drives to Yatina, remote farming community 3 hours north of Adelaide. The property Marshall describes is abandoned, overgrown, farmhouse collapsed. But the wells remain, covered with rotting boards, deep enough that anything dropped into them would disappear for decades. He stands at the edge of one well, staring down into darkness. Somewhere in this property, if Marshall is telling truth, lie the answers to 51 years of questions. The question is whether the Earth will give up what the killers never did. 2024. The excavation at Yatina begins on a Tuesday morning in October, spring heat already building across South Australia's mid-north. Detective Foster coordinates with forensic archaeologists, private investigators funded by media outlets, hungry for resolution, and ground-penetrating radar specialists, whose equipment can see what human eyes cannot. The GPR scans come first, technicians moving the device across overgrown property in systematic grids. The screen paints images of soil density, disturbances, anomalies that might indicate something buried. 3 wells show promising signatures. Earth that's been moved, compacted differently than surrounding soil, disturbed at depths consistent with deliberate burial. The digging begins at the first well. Careful, methodical excavation with hand tools rather than machinery. Every shovelful of dirt gets sifted, examined, documented. Forensic archaeology operates on the principle that context matters as much as evidence. Where something is found, at what depth, surrounded by what else. Chain of custody begins the moment the first spade breaks earth. Days pass. The first well yields nothing but rocks and old farm debris. The second well produces similar results. Decades of accumulated refuse, but nothing human. The team moves to the third well, the one Marshall's statement described with the most specific detail. 40 feet from the collapsed farmhouse, eastern edge of the property, depth approximately 15 feet. The excavators work in rotating shifts, protecting against the heat and the tedium. One afternoon in late October, a brush touches something that isn't rock, isn't metal, isn't the expected texture of undisturbed soil. The excavator stops, calls for the team leader, and everyone gathers around the small exposure in the dirt. The fragment is perhaps 3 inches long, porous structure consistent with bone, size suggesting not adult. The forensic anthropologist kneels beside the excavation, examining without touching, making initial assessment based on visible characteristics. Pelvic bone fragment, she says. Juvenile, possibly human. The words land like stones in still water. This is what they came looking for. This is also what they hoped not to find. Confirmation that Marshall's allegation wasn't fantasy or attention-seeking but testimony to where children died. The fragment gets carefully extracted, placed in sterile containers, documented with photographs from every angle. Only then does someone notice the second detail that makes the finding even more disturbing. Embedded in the bone are small fragments of glass, mineralized into the surface over decades of contact. Foster stares at the glass fragments and tries to imagine what they mean. Trauma involving glass, container used for disposal, industrial waste mixed with remains. The possibilities multiply, each one darker than the last. The bone travels to Forensic Science South Australia for analysis. Initial examination confirms 90% probability it's human. Size and structure consistent with a child between 4 and 11 years old, the exact age range of Kirste and Joanne. The glass fragments show signs of being present at the time of burial, not recent contamination. DNA extraction begins immediately. The challenge is degradation. 51 years underground in varying moisture and temperature conditions destroys genetic material. Nuclear DNA is likely unusable, but mitochondrial DNA is more resilient, passed through maternal lines, potentially still viable in small quantities. The Ratcliffe and Gordon families provide reference samples for comparison. Blood draws from siblings, surviving parents, anyone who shares maternal lineage with Joanne or Kirste. The samples go to the laboratory alongside the bone fragment, and then begins the waiting that defines modern forensic science. Weeks or months for processes that can't be rushed, results that may or may not provide answers. Foster reviews what they know. Arthur Stanley Brown, dead since 2002, identified by witnesses and facial recognition technology as matching the composite sketch. Strong circumstantial case but no physical evidence linking him to Adelaide Oval. Stanley Arthur Hart, dead since 1999, now connected to Yatina through his son's allegation, and a bone fragment found exactly where Marshall said bodies were buried. 2 suspects, both deceased, both beyond prosecution, one identified by witnesses at the crime scene, one identified by physical evidence at an alleged burial site. The evidence points in 2 directions simultaneously, suggesting either collaboration between predators or a single perpetrator history hasn't properly identified. The DNA results will determine which theory holds. If the bone matches Ratcliffe or Gordon families, Hart's connection to the case is confirmed. If it doesn't match, the fragment might belong to a different victim entirely, opening the possibility that Yatina was a dumping ground for multiple crimes. Foster sits in his office with photographs of 2 girls who asked permission to use a bathroom 51 years ago spread across his desk. Somewhere in a laboratory, genetic material extracted from a bone fragment is being compared to reference samples. The answer to what happened after Adelaide Oval exists now in molecules too small to see, in sequences of DNA that will either confirm half a century of questions or deepen the mystery into something even more disturbing. The waiting continues, and in Adelaide, 2 families prepare for the possibility that finally knowing might hurt more than 51 years of not knowing ever did. Early 2025. The bone fragment sits in a laboratory, its secrets locked in degraded DNA that may or may not yield answers. The extraction process continues, scientists working with material so compromised by time and soil chemistry that success is uncertain. Mitochondrial DNA is more stable than nuclear DNA, but 51 years underground tests the limits of what modern technology can recover. The Ratcliffe and Gordon families wait. Les Ratcliffe is in his 80s now if he's still alive, Kathleen the same. Kirste's parents have aged from young adults in their 20s to elderly people who've spent more of their lives searching than they spent with their daughter. Joanne would be 63 years old in 2025. Kirste would be 56. Entire lifetimes stolen at ages 11 and 4. The reality of modern cold cases is that solved doesn't equal justice served. Even if DNA confirms the bone belongs to Joanne or Kirste, even if the fragment definitively connects to Hart's property, prosecution is impossible. Arthur Stanley Brown died in 2002. Stanley Arthur Hart died in 1999. No trial will ever happen. No conviction will ever be recorded. The best possible outcome is knowing what happened, identifying who was responsible, and finally being able to bury the dead. For families, this is enough. The ambiguous loss, the psychological torture of not knowing if someone is alive or dead, is uniquely devastating. It prevents grief from progressing, keeps hope alive in ways that become poisonous over decades, makes every phone call a potential miracle or nightmare. The 1979 coroner's verdict gave legal closure, but not emotional closure. The Yatina discovery offers the possibility of real closure, of remains to bury, of certainty to replace 51 years of terrible wondering. The case has already changed how Australia protects children. The immediate aftermath of Adelaide Oval brought increased security at public venues, shifted cultural norms around supervision, introduced stranger danger education into schools. Long-term impacts include national missing persons databases, rapid alert systems similar to America's Amber Alert, and DNA databases that allow comparison with unidentified remains. The $1 million reward remains active, acknowledging that even with 2 prime suspects dead, accomplices might exist, witnesses might still come forward, someone might know something they've kept quiet for half a century. The composite sketch of the man in the hat has become one of Australia's most recognizable criminal images, representing not just this case but the broader danger of predators who operate in plain sight, who exploit the social assumptions that make people reluctant to intervene in what appears to be family business. What the case teaches extends beyond child safety protocols. It demonstrates how witness assumptions can enable crime. Every person who saw a man dragging children through Adelaide Oval's South Gate and thought frustrated father, rather than abduction in progress, carries some weight of what happened next. It shows how bureaucratic delays can cost lives, The 90-minute gap before the PA announcement allowed the predator to vanish beyond recovery. It proves that technology changes what's solvable. Ground-penetrating radar and mitochondrial DNA extraction have brought answers to a case that seemed permanently frozen in 1973. The man in the hat, whether Arthur Stanley Brown or Stanley Arthur Hart or someone else entirely, took his secrets to the grave. But the earth may yet speak. The bone embedded with glass waits in a laboratory for science to extract truth from degradation. Two families wait for confirmation that their decades of searching can finally end, that the girls can finally come home, that knowing can replace the endless uncertainty. Adelaide will never forget. The city carries Beaumont and Ratcliffe Gordon as permanent scars, reminders of innocence lost and children stolen. Every August 25th, the anniversary brings renewed media coverage, fresh appeals for information, moments of silence for two girls who asked permission to use a bathroom and walked into darkness. The final truth is this: Joanne Ratcliffe and Kirste Gordon were real children, who lived real lives, who had families who loved them, who disappeared in seconds and were searched for across decades. Whether the bone fragment at Yatina provides answers or deepens mystery, whether DNA confirms identity or remains inconclusive, whether justice proves possible or forever elusive, their names will endure. They matter. Their families matter. And the question that has haunted South Australia for 52 years, what happened to the children who vanished in plain sight, deserves an answer, even if that answer comes half a century too late. In a crowd of 12,000, two children vanished. In 52 years of searching, two families never gave up. In a well at Yatina, a bone embedded with glass waits to tell its story. And somewhere in the silence, Joanne and Kirste wait to finally be found. If you have any information about the Adelaide Oval abduction or recognize details from this case, contact South Australia Police. The $1 million reward remains active. Someone out there knows something. After 52 years, it's time to speak. Remember Joanne and Kirste, not for how they were taken, but for the investigation that refuses to stop, the families who never gave up, and the hope that even the oldest mysteries can still be solved.